Today I'm going to be predicting which UFC fighters on the current roster are going to have a rough 2025. Now, I understand it's a lot easier to predict which fighters are going to have a good 2025. I feel like that's an easier trajectory to kind of base off of, but you know what? Fuck it. Today we're going to be doing this. Going to be picking one fighter from each division who I think is going to have a bit of a skid in next year. Now, I did try to make this interesting as well. Like, I didn't try to go with like the more obvious choices like Paulo Costa for middleweight or fucking Chito Vera for bantamweight. Like, I tried to pick fighters who not all of them are just on like losing streaks, you know. Now granted, some of these fighters might be more obvious than others, but I tried to make it a bit more of a challenge. Like, some of these fighters are on win streaks right now, you know what I mean? Because you know what, sometimes you don't expect certain fighters to have downfalls until it happens. So this video is either gonna age like wine or age like milk, or somewhere in between. I guess we're gonna find out. So just jumping straight into it with the first up, Leon Edwards, former champ up here now. He's still ranked #1 at welterweight. Can you believe this guy's still ranked, I think, in the top 10 pound for pound as well? It's insane. Crazy how much of a difference 1 year can make, man. I mean, if you gotta think about it, if this guy went out and beat Belal this year and then had a couple more title defenses, people would have put him above Usman, but we're here now. The thing about Edwards, though, and why I think he's gonna have a rough next year and a rough next go, is because I think he's his own worst enemy. I think his lack of urgency inside and outside the cage is gonna be his biggest downfall, and I think it's gonna hurt. Like, look at what you're seeing on the screen, 0-1. And Leon Edwards has always been a fighter who has not fought a lot. You know what I mean? Focus on the fact that this guy's only fought once this year, and I get it. You know, you kind of want some time to recuperate, go back to the drawing board after you just had a title loss, and now you gotta fucking, you know, you gotta kind of think about shit. And I can understand that. You know, you're ranked #1 in the world. The next fight's gonna be very important, but at the end of the day, Leon Edwards, there's no urgency, man. There's no urgency. Like, when this guy's not in a fight camp, you never hear from this guy. And after this guy's lost the belt, by the way, where are all the Leon Edwards fans? Where do they go? I swear. Hey, headshot dead, bruv, in every comment section. And now it's all gone ever since the belt's off him. So his lack of activity, wanting to fight, he has, you know, he's one of those guys that fights once a year, even when he was on a tear. This isn't anything new with him, but the fact that he's getting older and older, and he's at 33 years old as well. So he's in his prime. And don't get me wrong, he's one of the most technical strikers on the entire roster. Leon Edwards is very, very skilled. He has good takedown defense, and we've seen him really stack up his resume. You know, he's got wins over Usman, Covington, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, he mentally breaks inside the cage, which is a big, you know, you're not going to be able to do that against a guy like JDM, Shavkat, etc., etc. Guys who are going to bring forth a pressure and a pace and make you uncomfortable in there like Belal did. You know, and Belal said afterwards, like, you know, I went in there and I knew this guy's breakable. You know, Khabib's ordering coffees off me in the gym and shit. Oh, wait, he doesn't swear. He'd say like fudge or some shit. But Khabib's ordering coffees off me, you know, and we're talking. I'm going to go out there and break this guy. And then Belal ended up dunking him on his head, you know? So I think Leon Edwards, he's mentally breakable in there, and the fact that the prospects and the new age at welterweight are really starting to take over, and like I mentioned, you got guys like Shavkat, JDM, even Joaquin Buckley and Ian Gary, I think are going to give this guy a lot of problems and beat him. Now, that's another part. I'm just transitioning into this. It's all adding up, but why I think Leon Edwards is going to have a rough next year, because he's going to have to fight some of these guys. He's going to have to fight at least once, you know? Leon really is eyeing that March 22nd card in London, wants to be the main event. The thing is, there's one name in that top 7 that I specifically didn't mention, well, besides Usman, and that is Sean Brady. Now, if he ends up fighting Sean Brady, I do think that's a winnable fight for him. Don't get me wrong, all these fights, I could see Leon winning. He is very skilled. I'm not trying to just shit in the guy. Headshot dead, bruv. I want to do the quadrilogy with Kobe Covington next, bruv. I want to fight Masvidal next year. I think Sean Brady is probably the most winnable fight for him if that were to happen. But even in like the UK, if these guys were to go into his territory, like an Ian Gary or a Joaquin Buckley, even, like, I think that Edwards is going to lose that. And how's his confidence going to be after that, you know? And here's the thing, I understand it's only March, but is Leon, this is how low we're at with Leon's activity, you know? We have to question, is he even going to fight for the rest of 2025 after that? Back to the drawing board once again, bro, fuck it. I think of his lack of activity, I think of his lack of his urgency, I think he's mentally breakable in the cage, and I think he's going to have a rough next year due to all that shit. So moving on up next to Charles Johnson, ranked number 12 at flyweight, coming in at 33 years old right now. And he went 4-0 this year. Charles Johnson definitely was the standout at flyweight, besides, you know, you have the Pantojas and all that shit. But Charles Johnson stood out and really put himself on the map and racked up a lot of good wins. You know, knocked out Joshua Van, had a back and forth with Sumadarji. He had other fights as well. I mean, 4-0 in 1 year is very impressive, especially considering that he had a rough last year. So now here's the thing, and why I think that Charles Johnson, as amazing a year as he had, you know, and he's had great fights in there. And 33 is in his prime as well. So why do I think that this guy who's on a tear right now is going to fall off? I think that for as good as Charles Johnson is, I think he's going to hit that wall when it comes to that top 5 level. Charles Johnson's very skilled, you know, he's good on the feet, and I think he's showing that he's the most elite outside kind of like that top 10 level. But I think if you put this guy against a Tatsuro Taira, if you put him against a Brandon Royval, Manel Kape, Brandon Moreno, there's kind of nowhere to run anymore once you get to that certain level. And don't get me wrong, these are the matchups I'm sure that he wants, and I respect that he wants all the smoke, but at the end of the day, I understand that it's easy to just shit on the flyweight division, but I do think a lot of the division, there's really talented guys in there, and I think that Charles Johnson might hit that wall. I'm not saying that he's going to go back to being 0-4 in a year again, but what I will say is that I could see him going kind of a 2-2 route. I'm sure that he wants to stay active. I'm sure that he wants to keep climbing the ranks, and again, he has a good, entertaining style, but at the end of the day, I think that the very, very elite of flyweight is going to be a little bit too much for him. There's a lot of dangerous matchups out there. Now, don't get me wrong, I think he has a chance of being like a Steve Erceg, Alex Perez, like guys like that. But again, when you get to like that top 6, top 7, I think it becomes pretty dangerous for him. So moving on up next to Justin Gaethje, the number 3 ranked lightweight, and painful to say, but 36 years old. Justin Gaethje is going to be 37 in 2025, as wild as it is to say. Now, Justin Gaethje, man, 0-1 this year. Can't blame him. I mentioned Leon Edwards going 0-1 this year and the lack of activity, and I was shitting on him for it, and I think that's pretty fair. But Justin Gaethje, man, he's been in absolute wars. He's had the wear and tear. He's put the mileage on, and now he's at this point in his career where, had a brutal knockout loss to Holloway, even just got 49-46, even if that knockout didn't happen. So I think the time off for Gaethje was bound to happen this year regardless if that knockout happened or not. But I get it, man. There's big talks to him coming back of fighting Dan Hooker at UFC 313 or 14, which is a banger, and it's going to be one of the fights of the year, one of the most anticipated for sure. But I respect and can understand Gaethje taking the time off, all right? And I'm not saying that we're going to just see a worse Justin Gaethje come back next year against Dan Hooker or anybody, but at the end of the day, why I think Justin Gaethje is going to have a rough go next year is because I think he's going to fight once or twice and lose both of those fights, okay? I think he's going to retire. Maybe not, though. You got to consider these guys like Gaethje, Poirier, and many more that are around this 36 to 39 range, and we could see a lot of retirements coming in the next couple years. And at the end of the day, Justin Gaethje, he's putting a lot of highlights, but you got to question, like I'm saying, all the mileage and all the wear and tear. Is it going to be a bit too much? How is his chin going to recover after really getting slumped like that? Like, we've seen Gaethje get finished, don't get me wrong, and he's been in absolute wars. He gets the fuck after it, but at the end of the day, I do think that if he's going to fight Dan Hooker in the spring, I think that Dan Hooker's going to win that fight, and then if Gaethje wants to do maybe a retirement fight in the winter and fight one of those top-ranked guys, I mean, who knows who it's going to be, but I just can't see Gaethje really getting a win when I'm looking at a lot of these matchups. Obviously, there are a lot of matchups that Justin Gaethje could win, don't get me wrong. But if we're at the point where we're really considering that if he's going to fight like a Paddy Pimblett, and Paddy Pimblett is going to beat him, which that's a fair argument. If him and Pimblett fought, that Pimblett would get the better of him, then that's just where I got to call it. But in terms of just how it's going to look against Dan Hooker, I'm not thinking he takes that one. I'm not really sure, even with the whole year off. I think we're going to see a crisp Justin Gaethje, don't get me wrong. He's going to be crisp on the feet, just as powerful. Well, maybe not just as, but he's still going to be swinging and banging with a lot of power behind those hands like we've seen in the past, And I know that Dan Hooker, on the other hand, is taking a lot of damage. So you could say the same exact thing about Dan Hooker, and that's a totally fair argument. But I just think Dan Hooker has all the momentum on his side right now. And I think that Justin Gaethje, it's not like he lost all of his aura, but it's more so like he fell off without falling off. You know what I mean? Because he still has the credibility. He's still ranked number 3. Everybody knows how entertaining he is, how dangerous he is, And like I said, he can beat a lot of the guys in the rankings. Sorry to pretty much just make that a breakdown versus Dan Hooker, but yeah, I think Justin Gaethje is going to go 0-1, 0-2 next year, as sad as it is. So moving on up next to definitely one of the harder ones to call here, but going for the featherweight division, we got Lerone Murphy, undefeated, 18-0, 19-0, something like that, I believe. It's crazy, by the way. I realized this today at work, that there are literally, maybe a lot of people knew this already, but the fact that featherweight has 3 undefeated fighters in the top 11 is pretty crazy. You got Evloev and Topuria, I mean, the goddamn champ as well. So it's pretty crazy. But talking about the undefeated Lerone Murphy, bro, 33 years old, so he's in his prime right now. Big UK prospect on the rise, and he went 2-0 this year. Got good wins over Dan Ige, and especially a good win over Edson Barboza. Absolutely pieced him the hell up. Actually, an entertaining fight, man. It kind of put him, or should I say, kind of rose his stock a bit, And the Dan Ige win, it was definitely a good look for him, Dan Ige definitely made the fight competitive, don't get me wrong, but I mean, Murphy is a great talent. He's well-rounded, he's clean on the feet, he's technical, and he has solid wrestling as well, offensively and defensively, and we've seen that. He's quick, and he's young, and he's precise, but the thing is, it's similar to what I was saying about Charles Johnson. I think that there's going to be a wall that Lerone Murphy hits when he kind of gets to that upper level, you know? How's this guy going to do against a Topuria? Maybe that's even setting it too high, okay? Let's say, how does he do against a Diego Lopez, Movsar Evloev, Aljamain Sterling even, Arnold Allen, even a Yair Rodriguez? I could see Rodriguez giving him a shit ton of problems. So Lerone Murphy, very well-rounded, very technical, you know? Is he the most exciting fighter in the world? No, but definitely one of the UK's biggest prospects right now. But I just think one of these guys, is going to go next year. You know, we have Topuria, Evloev, and Lerone Murphy. And I'm going to say, I understand that he's, you know, ranked the lowest, so it's kind of maybe easiest to pick him out of anybody. But at the end of the day, for as good as he is, and he is undefeated, I do think that he's going to run into some problems next year. Not going to say he's going to lose his next immediate fight, okay? But if he's going to fight 2 or 3 times next year and really get up to that top 5 level, I could see problems for him. So moving on up next to Mario Bautista. Fuck this guy, alright? I've talked a lot about this guy, man. Ironic that this guy has death before dishonor on his goddamn chest, you know, considering dishonor the hell out of Jose Aldo, but alright, now I'm just shitting on people's tattoos. Okay, Mario Bautista, alright, as easy as it is to shit on this guy, you know, definitely dropped the hell out of his stock. Not to say that he was really the biggest name before, or really was like a fan favorite, but it's like Mario Bautista was that neutral ground, you know? And definitely probably the most hated fighter of 2024 now after just one fight. So it's pretty wild. But let's talk about, I'm not just picking Mario Bautista right out of the bantamweights just because it's easy to shit on him. I do want to say, and I will admit, that Mario Bautista does have skills, okay? Not considering whatever the fuck happened in the Jose Aldo fight, Mario Bautista definitely, I can respect the win streak, and he definitely has had some good moments. He's alright on the feet, and he's got alright grappling, but at the end of the day, I do think that he's going to be very, very tested when he hits these certain guys, if they even want to fight him, you know, because we had Cejudo, which, by the way, this guy was so hated that he made Cejudo look badass in there when he was talking shit to him, you know, face to face or whatever, and the camera was going. And Cejudo was like, nobody's gonna fight you, man. Nobody's gonna fight you. You're boring, bro. You want to fight the flyweight champ, Henry Cejudo, man? You want to fight me? Nobody's gonna fight you, man. And that's, you know what? That's pretty much how it's gonna go. I don't see a lot of those top guys really looking to fight Mario Bautista. Like Jose Aldo gave you a chance, which Jose Aldo did not need to take that fight. He had already fought and beat a prospect, you know, pretty clearly in Jonathan Martinez right before. So he didn't need to do this. There were so many other matchups for him. You know, imagine like a Corey Sandhagen versus Jose Aldo. You know what I mean? Even a Henry Cejudo versus a Jose Aldo, you know? It'd be interesting to see, especially with all those takedown offense. But he gave Mario Bautista the chance, and he absolutely fucking dropped the ball, you know? Now fans have a bad impression of him. Now these guys at the very top of the rankings in that top 10 are going to be like, fuck this guy. I'm not going to fight this guy. I'm not going to put my legacy or win streak or whatever's on stake on the line against a guy who is going to go out there and smudge me and has no problem with it and is going to cry after and all this shit. And it's like, I think that they're going to feed him somebody just kind of random, you know, from that 10 to 15 range in the rankings. Maybe somebody outside the rankings. Who the hell knows? Some random daggy just to try and take out Mario Bautista. And I see this guy going back to just being like an Apex fight, you know, an Apex co-main, an Apex like feature bout. Like I could see that for him right now. Maybe it is an over-exaggeration, but you can tell that the boss was not happy about that. You think Hunter and Dana were like, oh, dude, let's give this guy Song Yadong next. Let's give this guy Cheeto Vera next. Like, I don't know. But at the end of the day, just not even talking about the last fight again. Not even talking about how hate he is, whatever the hell. I do think that when he's going to fight like a Corey Sandhagen next, if he even was going to get to that point, or Henry Cejudo, if it even was going to get to that point, or a Song Yadong, pretty much most of the guys in the top 10, even like a Peyton Talbot, I could see Peyton Talbot knocking this guy out. It's not like this guy's undefeated. This guy has lost before. Don't get me wrong. He has like a 6 or 7 fight win streak going on right now, I believe. And that is impressive in its own right, you know. And he did go 2-0 this year, you know, beat Ricky Simone, I think in like January or some shit like that. But Ricky Simone and a smudge win over Jose Aldo is not enough to make me go like, oh, this guy's the next guy at bantamweight. Like, there's so many other top guys that are on the rise right now at bantamweight. I don't even want to say top guys, like prospects to invest in a bantamweight. It's a super deep division, you know? I think Marcus McGee could beat this guy's ass, you know? Stylistically, there's a lot of dangerous matchups for him, and Mario Bautista is just very beatable. So, and who knows, maybe he's going to go out there, a chip on his shoulder, 10 chips on the goddamn shoulder. He's going to go out there and want to knock this guy's head off, whoever the hell it may be, put himself back on the map, shut everybody up. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening. That's like saying Leon Edwards is going to go out there and he's going to fucking try and take somebody out and run one round just to prove it to everyone. That's not what's going to happen. Moving on, up next to another one that might be hard to call, but for the heavyweight division, I went with Ciryl Gane. Now, I understand that maybe you can go with like a Sergey Pavlovich or like a Shamil Gaziev, maybe like, but Ciryl Gane, man, I just think this guy he's beatable, and he's at this point right now where he's going to be fighting someone at the very, very top up next. You know what I mean? No matter who it is. It's going to be a Ciryl Almeida, or it's going to be the winner of Jones and Aspinall. Well, not Jones, but it would be Tom Aspinall. And again, Alexander Volkov beat this guy in his only fight of the year. And I think that Ciryl Gane, man, 13-2, when you look at that record, you can go like, oh, that's a pretty good record. And Ciryl Gane, when you look at his skill set, he actually is a very skilled fighter, and he actually was saying in the build up to the fight against Volkov, that he was focusing a lot more on the wrestling, and you could tell that he wasn't as hesitant down there, and he was definitely more comfortable with taking the fight down there. Granted, he lost against Volkov. It was a robbery. It was fucked up. I don't even want to talk about it, dude. I had money on Volkov, and I don't even want to talk about him. But don't get me wrong, Gane is a very skilled fighter. He's one of the best Valium strikers in the UFC, especially at heavyweight. He's very skilled on the feet. He's very quick. He moves like a middleweight, and it's impressive to see. And again, we did see improvements in the grappling against Volkov, but at the end of the day, let's fucking cut around the bullshit. Like I'm saying, this guy lost. And I just think now he's going to fight a Ciryl Almeida next, or he's going to fight a Tom Aspinall. I don't see him beating those guys. And for as good as I think Gane is, and I think Gane beats most of the guys in the heavyweight division, he is a good talent and definitely is French's best shot right now at a star. I just think that Gane lacks the motivation right now to kind of go all in. And I think a big factor to consider for that Volkov fight is that it wasn't in Paris. You got to it's easy to get these wins over Tuivasa or Sergey Spivak, who granted Gane has a better skill set than those kinds of guys. Anyways, but with the Paris crowd, and having all that momentum on him, it's just, you could tell the company wants to invest in this guy. You could tell that Gane he's comfortable there, and when he doesn't fight in Paris, he loses. He's lost to Ngannou in the States. He lost to Jones in the States. He lost to Volkov in the States, and those are his most recent losses. His most recent wins are Tuivasa and Spivak, I believe, which, were the hometown advantage and all that shit, and he was, you gotta question the motivation of Gane, because he's out here making movies and shit, and that's fine if you want to be a person. I understand that, I'm not trying to say that, fighting has to dictate your entire life. But when you're ranked number 2 in the world, okay, and you're 34 years old, you're in your prime. I understand that heavyweights go a bit past 34, though. I understand that, but in terms of their prime. But if you're going to be facing the elite competition, if you're going to face guys like Volkov, who's dialed in all year, and he's working on making these improvements since the first fight, it's not like Volkov is worrying about being in movies or worrying about what his next Instagram ad's going to be and all that kind of shit. Worrying about what kind of scarves he's going to wear. He doesn't think about that. He's dialed in on being one of the most elite fighters in the world and getting the belt back. And not to say that Gane doesn't want to be a champion or make it to the top. I'm sure he does. He is an athlete at the end of the day, and it's very, very hard to go out there and fight, man. I put all respect on Gane. Very, very skilled, but I'm keeping it straight. I just think that he's going to lack the motivation. I think that's going to hurt him. Again, I think Gane beats most of the heavyweight division, but in terms of next year, I don't think he's going to be getting easy matchups. He has nowhere to really go. He's ranked number 2 in the world. They're going to have to give him somebody at the very, very top. Somebody, if they do Jones versus Aspinall, they're going to give him, either he's going to wait to fight Aspinall, or he's just going to fight an Almeida or some shit in the meantime. Maybe the winner of like a Sergey Pavlovich versus Rosenstruck. I know that's going down February 1st. That could be cool. Maybe do the winner of Gane versus that. That could be something interesting. In a way for Gane to redeem himself and kind of get the momentum going, And it'd be nice to see Gane get a title shot with not just having one win. You know what I mean? We've been doing that a lot in the UFC lately. So, Gane, very skilled fighter, but I just think that he's kind of lacking the heart right now, and I don't see him really riding much momentum after this recent robbery, and he's going to have a tough time with guys like Aspinall, all that shit. So, moving on up next to Jan Blachowicz, ranked number 4 still at light heavyweight. And all due respect to him, though, man, even though he didn't fight in 2024, I gotta respect Jan for being still one of the best light heavyweights in the world. I still think he's gonna beat most of the guys in the division. The problem is, though, he's fighting Carlos Ulberg, who is obviously the division's big prospect right now, and he's gonna be fighting the March 22nd London card. And that's a fight that if it happened 2 years ago, or even if he took the present day version of Ulberg versus 2 years ago Blachowicz, I think Blachowicz wins that fight. But unfortunately, we're at the situation, man, where you get to a fighter in a certain point in his career, like Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady. If you got to think, if that was Gilbert Burns that fought Chimaev, would he have lost to Brady and looked as slow as he did and had Brady just kind of dominate like he did? There's times in fighters' careers where they hit a certain age where they lose to guys that they usually wouldn't lose to or shouldn't lose to, and I think that it's going to be Jan Blachowicz's biggest thing next year. I think he's going to lose to Carlos Ulberg, and he's either going to retire or fight once again, maybe in the winter, and then I think he might lose that one. I don't think it's anything wrong with Blachowicz's skill set. Blachowicz is a very well-rounded fighter. He has power on the feet. He's a good striker. He's one of the best leg kickers in the game. He has wrestling, and we've seen him go 5 rounds, and we've seen him get stoppages quick, and at the end of the day, I just think I'm glad that Blachowicz was finally getting the respect that he really deserved towards the tail end of his career. And I know that he suffered the injuries, I believe. He was supposed to fight Rakic, which is crazy, in January. Think of the butterfly effect if that fight ended up happening. Like, I think that Blachowicz, very good fighter. I just think that, unfortunately, Father Time is going to get the better of him, and I think he's going to be retiring next year. Either going to go 0-1 or 0-2, as unfortunate it is. And don't get me wrong, I could see him beating Carlos Ober. There's a lot of holes in Carlos Ober's game. I know that he is the big prospect of the division right now, but it's not like he's going out there and, like, knocking out Volkan Ozdemir in a round. You know, he took a Volkan Ozdemir. It was a competitive fight. Some people thought Ozdemir won that. I don't think so. I still thought it was 2-1 Ober. But these are still, that's a real thing. That's a real thing, you know? So that's going to be it for Blachowicz, but all due respect. So moving on up next to, I believe this is our last one, representing the middleweights, we have Brendan Allen. So here's the thing, Brendan Allen, 28 years old, so there's definitely a lot of time for this guy to bounce back. He did go 1-1 this year, coming off a loss where it was a pretty bad performance for him, and he had a really close fight as well with Chris Curtis, so pretty not great 2024 for Brendan Allen, but you know what? He didn't get finished, all right, and he did get a win. So, and again, 28, there's going to be time for him to kind of bounce back. He's still in the top 10, but here's the thing why I think next year is going to be rough for him. I think that, well, it already, I feel like, kind of happened, you know? He's going to run into problems, okay, with his style because Brendan Allen doesn't have much on the feet, okay? And his grappling kind of hits a wall with certain guys. Like, he's not going to be able to kind of just take down everybody. And it's not like he went out there, when he gassed out and was kind of just face first planting towards the canvas against Nasruddin Imavov at Paris. This isn't like he's going to Salt Lake City and he's dealing with the high-ass elevation and all this shit. Like, he went out there, got a really clean takedown in the first round, did absolutely nothing with it, whatever, fine, but you won the round. Just, it was bad for the remainder of the rounds, and honestly, he had some okay moments on the feet, but then just proceeded to have the lowest fight IQ and was just shooting face first. So I think that Brendan Allen, man, I think he's just going to need to kind of go back to the drawing board. I do think there's winnable matchups for him in the rankings, but I also think that when he's going to go and face a lot of guys who are well-rounded enough like Imavov. Imavov is primarily a striker, but Imavov, the difference is he's well-rounded enough that he knows how to wrestle. You know, he can defend a lot of takedowns, and we saw that as the fight progressed against Allen. He stuffed a lot of those takedowns in the second and third round, or pretty much all of them. So Allen's a good grappler, don't get me wrong, but I just think that the holes in his game are going to be dangerous, especially now that you guys have guys like Anthony Hernandez coming up and more. Like, if this guy's going to keep facing guys like even near the top 6, like we're going to give him Cal Baralho or some shit next, like don't get me wrong, there are, again, winnable fights, but I just think that with his style, stylistically, there's going to be a lot of problems for him. So pretty much that is going to be it for the video. These are some of the fighters that I think are going to have a rough next year. Now, again, this is going to age good or it's going to age bad, man. At the end of the day, thank you guys so very much for making it this far into the video. Appreciate y'all. We just did 600 subs the other day, so I appreciate y'all a lot for that. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be getting this video up by Christmas, so have a good holidays, y'all. Enjoy it. Go fucking eat up. So I want y'all looking like Patty the fucking body light after this fucking Christmas, dude. So have a good holidays, guys. Thank you so very much for making this far in the video. All the smoke MMA. Appreciate you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Where was I right? Where was I wrong? Who do you think is going to have a rough next year? And thank you guys so very much for watching.